They won't come out to watch running at that hour. We can't start the race at noon on a holiday like they did in Boston with Patriots Day, or 11 o'clock in the morning, in New York. No, it's going to have to start at dark 30. And how are we going to make this thing work? Why will people come out? Well, maybe they'll come out to listen to music. We'll run this race through 26 mini concerts. All right. What kind of music? Classical? No. Jazz? No. Rock and roll? All right, yeah.
Hey. It's Andy Petronic. And welcome back. This is episode number 150. 150. Woo! I love that number. It's the Andy Petronic Podcast. And this is where it's my job to talk health, life, and well-being with the foremost leaders in the field, giving you the joy, knowledge, and inspiration you need to live your best life. Coming up today, I'm having a conversation with someone named Tracy Sundlun. Household name, right? Everybody's heard of him before. Ha! Nope. Sure you haven't. He is, I don't know if he would call himself the founder, the co-founder. He was certainly right there at the formation of the Rock and Roll Marathon. And he's been in the running business for over 50 years. Super behind-the-scenes guy, coach, influencer. But before I get to more about Tracy, let me tell you, I got a few other things to share with you. God, I'm so excited. There's some big changes coming for the podcast. I'm not going to tell you what they are. I love change, first of all. It's so funny. I remember back in my days of running the gym at CrossFit LA, Petronic Fitness, my staff would always cringe when I came in with the words, "So, Jennifer, I've got an idea." Oh no! because they would have just gotten used to the way things were, and I would have this idea of we got to make things better. We always got to make things better. And I hope to be making things better with a podcast. I've already let you guys in on one thing. I'm working with a new possible format. It's not actually possible format. I'm actually playing with it in my interviews that I'm doing now that'll be airing in a few weeks. Holding myself to an hour. I haven't quite made it under an hour, but I'm holding myself to like an hour and 10. The last interview was interesting. We were talking from Finland to me here in California, and we had some really weird audio things happen. And so I lost complete track of time. I don't know that I actually held myself to an hour and 10. I'm thinking I did. It was the best I could do at guessing, but it was a really cool conversation. Anyway, that's one of the changes, but bunch of little things, bunch of big things. And I think it's going to make it better it's certainly going to make it better for me, because one of the things that's a challenge is, podcasting isn't my full-time job, and I'm not running the if the podcast takes so much of my energy and time and effort each week to produce and do, which believe it or not, it has. And I got to the place where I'm like, I got to change this, because it's becoming more work and less fun. And I'm my best when my work is more fun, and it's still work, but it doesn't feel like work. It feels like fun. I do this for fun. So we're making some internal changes to how it's displayed and stuff. But I'm not going to tell you about some of the other things. You'll just have to wait and see. There was something else I wanted to share with you guys, and I didn't write it down. So I'm just going to have to roll into Tracy Sundlun. And, actually, that's probably a good thing, because I can get going on topics, and things that you may or may not be interested in hearing about. And quite honestly, you're here to listen to the interviews. And the interviews are awesome. They're epic. The stories are phenomenal. And Tracy Sundlun, I mean, this is a guy, the older I get, the more I want to hear stories about the old times. I don't know if any of you are interested in hearing stories about the old times, but, you know, one of the things that came up in our conversation is, you know, there was a time that there was no prize money for marathon winners. Tracy talks about that. And there was a time when chiropractors, physical therapists, and massage therapists were not allowed onto the playing field in track and field events to take care of athletes. Tracy was there for that. Tracy was actually instrumental in making that change, at least for the United States, but probably had an influence in other teams around the world. And they're epic stories. And the funny thing is, Tracy didn't tell the stories. He doesn't tell the stories in a self-aggrandizing way. He tells the stories from the standpoint that, hey, this was a problem and it needed solving, and I'm just in the right place at the right time to solve the problem. And that's what he did in many, many cases. And the most epic of those that we talk quite a lot about during the podcast is the Rock and Roll Marathon. He was there at the beginning when it was a cockamamie idea. They wanted to be the biggest and greatest running event ever. That was their goal right out of the gate. And they were trying to figure out how to do that and how to mimic. I'll give you a little teaser of what's coming. We talked about the Carlsbad 5000, which was a classic. I don't know if it's still going on, actually. It's a 5K in Carlsbad that was a huge party, and all the best 5Kers in the world would come to the party and set world record times every time they ran the bad 5000. I know about it because I did it. I didn't set a world record time. Let's not kid ourselves. But I did the Carlsbad 5000, and that was the spirit within which they wanted to create a marathon, and that was the Rock and Roll Marathon. So just an epic conversation. There are probably 20 more stories that Tracy's got inside him that I want him back on the podcast to talk about, because he's just full of the like I said, the way things were. And God, we forget how we just take for granted things that we have today. The way things are, they weren't that way. They weren't always that way. And it's really, really a fun podcast. So sit down, relax, kick your feet up. This is a really fun storytelling adventure with Tracy, and I know you're going to love this one. So here we go. Tracy Sundlun. Enjoy. Good morning, everyone, and good morning, Tracy. I'm on with Tracy Sundlun. He's the founder of the Rock and Roll Marathon. Way more than just the Rock and Roll Marathon. He's been involved in the sport of running and the activity of running for, I don't know how many years? A long, long, long time.
I was just figuring it out. We were with some friends this past weekend at the National Track and Field Championships in Des Moines, and we honored my mentor, who I first started to deal with in 1967.
Wow.
So, 51 years. I know I don't look a day over 50.
Tracy, you've been doing this almost exactly the length of time I've been alive. So that's pretty cool.
I meet more and more people like you, and actually, usually they're even younger. So, oi!
I mean, it's not very often that I get to talk with someone who has been doing, who has had the impact that you have, and who's been doing been in one field for as long as you have, consistently for 50 years. I mean, that is a testament. That's amazing.
Well, avocation became occupation. I've never worked a day in my life. I mean, I've just been blessed. I was lit up by athletics, in particular track and field, which then morphed into running later. But at age 12, and I can remember the day and the moment distinctly, and it has never wavered a moment since then.
Were you a runner growing up? Like when you said, what was that moment? What moment are you talking about?
I wasn't a runner. I was a chubby, short, white Jewish kid. I was not built for that. No, I was an age group tennis player, a local age group tennis player in Washington, D.C. I was just as soon hit the ball as throw the racket. It was just had a bad temper. I would win the local age group tournaments. At the top of my age group, I'd be a quarterfinalist or a semifinalist at the bottom. And I was 12. I was the top of the age group. I won a tournament at St. Albans School.
Wait, St. Albans? That's next to the National Cathedral, right?
And that is exactly correct.
I grew up. So my grandfather built a house in American University Park in 1939, and my aunt still lives in the house. And one of my best buddies. So I lived in North Chevy Chase, and one of my best buddies when I was young went to St. Albans School. When I was when I went down to play, I had one group of friends where I lived in Chevy Chase, and then I had this other kid who was my buddy that we palled around with around the house, around the neighborhood, who went to St. Albans School. That's a very small world. Wow.
What high school did you go to?
I went to, well, let's see. My mom and dad both taught at local high schools. My dad taught at BCC, and my mom taught at was there a high school called Woodward?
Yep.
Or she taught at Woodward or Wooten, or I don't know. I can't remember.
Well,
they were both music. They were both music people.
Did your dad teach Sandra Bullock at BCC? I
don't know. She went to BCC?
She did.
Wow. I didn't know that.
All right. Another bit of news for you today. But I went to Sidwell Friends School up through the 8th grade.
This is crazy. I had another friend who went, my best friend when I met when I was 2 went to Sidwell Friends School. What the heck? That is crazy. Wow.
So I am walking back to school having won this tournament, and I see a fellow throwing the discus. Now, I always had an eye for movement, and I'm watching him. I was fascinated with track and field in general. I was a fan. My dad had been a very good track athlete. But I saw him throwing this discus, and it just struck me that he was doing it wrong.
You were 12.
And I was 12.
How old was the guy throwing it?
You're getting ahead of the story.
Oh, sorry.
So I approached him, having just won the tournament, feeling my oats. I told him what I thought. I excused myself. And he tried it. It worked. And then it turned out that he was already the city record holder.
Wow.
So he was a senior at school. And his name was Pete Donovan. He went on and got in Sports Illustrated for kicking field goals for Dartmouth. I still remember exactly what I told him. And I started to go to track practice after tennis practice. And I knew from that moment on that I could help people through athletics, and was driven from that moment on.
What did you tell him? I'm just curious.
He was blocking in the middle of the circle. He has to keep driving his hip around so that he could essentially create that slingshot moment.
Uh-huh.
And often people, when they come across the circle, they don't keep driving the knee and the toe around. It just looked like there was a stop in the motion.
Wow.
And that's what I told him. And he tried it, and bing.
I think it's remarkable that a 12-year-old can see that. I mean, because I've been a coach for 25 years, and I use tools like super slow-mo camera, and there's an app called Coach's Eye where I can slow things down and I can scroll back and forth and watch the movement. I know how hard it is to see someone at full speed and catch what's missing, and I know how fast the the rotation is for the discus. So that's amazing that you were able to see that.
I've always had that eye for movement. And I don't know where it came from, and it continues to exist. Yes, you youngsters, you have all these newfangled gizmos that allow you to slow things down, and there's some of us that can sit in a standstill and we pontificate.
Yeah, right. I mean, that is a skill, because
but it's amazing what the new stuff is. I've been working with something called Vulcam, where you can basically have 6 different points of view. Use your iPhone. It requires nothing, and you can in live and then send it to Facebook, send it email as it's going on, and watch it from 6 different angles.
Wow.
Simultaneously. As a coach, you all get comfortable looking at things from one angle, but you need to look at it from others.
Yep.
But anyway, it's that was the moment, and I started to go to, and I just was blessed with being with mentors and coaches that didn't say, "Oh, what do you mean you want to coach? What do you mean you want to do this? You should be competing." They just encouraged it, and they welcomed me. And it started with a fellow named Brooks Johnson, who we just honored in Des Moines. He was a teacher at St. Albans, a track coach, and had something called Sports International Track Club. And he's gone on, and he's had athletes in every Olympics since 1960.
Wow.
To this day. Brilliant fellow, and it went from there to Exeter Academy and on.
How, did you, from that moment forward, did you study mechanics or biomechanics in college? Did you go on to actually fill in things you didn't necessarily just innately know, or did you not ever have to do that?
No. I laugh because I wound up going to Georgetown just so I can continue to do some work with Brooks and with a program that I had created in the city for the mayor's athletic clinics. And I talked my way into school after school had started, and then I proceeded to get a 1.4 and a 1.3 in my first 2 semesters because I just looked and studied things that I wanted. I didn't go to finals. I took anatomy and physiology with the nurses, but I was just completely fascinated with how muscles moved. And so, no, the answer is yes. I just fed on anything that was out there. But I would say, as a coach, I am certainly didn't come from the scientific side of things. Mm-hmm. There are many, many people over the years much more into that than I.
What would you say is what did you develop as your specialty? What was your, where did you excel?
Great athlete.
Uh-oh. We lost your video.
No.
There we go.
I get phone calls all the time. Sorry.
Oh, no worries.
I turned it off. I get great athletes make great coaches, not necessarily the other way around. And I've been blessed with amazing talents, mentally and physically, from the 100 meters to the marathon and every field event, and men, women. It's been a marvelous ride.
Well, when you first started, did you start as a track coach? I mean, was that your first job out of college?
Yes. No, in college.
Or in college, huh?
Yes, I did strictly track, very much focused on, well, candidly, road racing really wasn't a thing back then. Certainly not for the masses.
Right.
But I coached collegiately. I coached clubs. I came to New York to do the in '79 to do television for the 1980 Olympics. Then we didn't have one.
Yeah, right. Right.
I had been the women's coach at the University of Colorado just before that, after being at University of Southern California. And I got involved with a club called the Warren Street Social and Athletic Club in New York. Just started coaching and marathoning and half marathoning. Actually, it was just marathoning back then. And again, great athletes. And we got involved with, it was in the beginning of the prize money, above the table money, the professional era, the open running era.
It's so funny. I don't really remember a time when that wasn't the case, probably because I wasn't involved in the sport. So when there was no prize money prior to, I mean, I can't even really imagine that. What do you mean no prize money?
Fall of 1980.
Huh.
Right there on the wall, I have the first checks ever sent.
Wow.
Ever issued. The Jordache Atlantic City Marathon. Everybody was afraid to compete because they were threatened with bans by both the AAU and the IAAF.
Why? Because they'd be getting money for running?
They'd be professional, absolutely.
Ah. Running was all amateur at that point.
Virtually all Olympic sports were.
Yeah, right.
But very much so. And our team had actually gone and I'd run a cross-country meet at Rutgers against the Rutgers JV, and we got our behinds handed to us. And we happened to be down there, and one of the girls said, well, there's the Atlantic City Marathon is tomorrow. They're giving out money. You want to go? And off we went. And they gave out 50,000. I think we won 35 of it.
Wow.
And then they tried to ban us, these jolly joggers.
Uh-huh.
And we fought them, and ultimately we won.
So back then, if you wanted to be a runner in the Olympics or in, at a super high level, did you have to have a job? How did
most people had jobs, and yes, there were a few. There was money underneath the table.
Okay,
very much so.
Right.
And it was cash on track. It was largely in Europe. If you go back and look at the Google Fred Lebo and Mayor Koch, he came out publicly in a book and said he'd been paying athletes against what the agreement was with the mayor. And the mayor said, okay, now you'll pay for your city services as well. But in that era, no, that there was not money above the table. And candidly, even today, the non-clarity as to really what money is involved is to the sport's disadvantage. Yes, there might be a prize money that is published for the New York City Marathon or the London Marathon or any particular track meet. Yet, the real money is in the appearance money. The real money is in the bonuses that come from various sponsors.
Right.
So they're not winning just $100,000 and $150,000 if they win New York or Boston. The right person's going to turn that into 750 or $1 million. And then all of a sudden, maybe it's more attractive to do running. Right now they grow up and they see nothing but gazillion-dollar contracts for football and basketball, and that's where our kids go. But if they knew that the top-end track athlete or runner could certainly make into seven figures well, maybe they'd actually stay at it. Am I making any sense?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, 100%.
So much of the money is really still hidden.
Yeah.
It's not visible to the layman. And that's to our disadvantage.
I mean, it's like a lot of the other, perhaps anyway. It's a lot like some of the other individual sports. I don't know if like triathlon comes to mind, or like even some of the motorsports or the snowboard ski sports. Although there's a lot more commercialization of that now, it's maybe more obvious that there's money to be had from sponsorships and whatnot than in running.
I would assume that you're 100% correct. And yes, many of those sports are more commercialized. Even what the athletes are allowed to wear. I mean, look at motor racing. Look at an interview and how often they change their hat.
Right.
But to a degree, that's to track and field, athletics, running's detriment. We've been around a long time. Triathlon learned a whole lot from ourselves.
Right.
I mean, even from the economics of it, I can still remember being with Fred Lebo one night. He was the founder of the New York City Marathon, and it was the night or two before the marathon, and we were stuffing goodie bags, and he said, "Tracy, come look at this. This is so cool. I'm giving everybody $42 worth of stuff, and the entry fee is only $35." I said, "Fred, that's the stupidest thing that I've ever heard." You were in the rag business. He used to be in the clothing business. You never do that. There's Keystone. He says, "Oh, you're right." Now, I mean, we used to have road races and track meets where the road race $2 to run. Track meets 25 cents. Now triathlon comes along and they see this. Oh no, we're going to recognize what our costs are really, and let's build it properly. Whereas in road racing and track and field, we've been digging ourselves out of the hole.
Right. Sorry for the brief interruption, but I've got to tell you about our sponsor, The Good Kitchen. The Good Kitchen, you've heard me talk about them before, over and over again. Yeah, they just deliver the most amazing meals. Right here, doorstep, pre-cooked, Whole Life Challenge compliant with keto and with paleo and with vegetarian. And every time I open a new one up to try it out, they surprise and delight me with their deliciousness. And it just makes my life simple and easy. I don't have to think about lunches. They make breakfasts, they make dinners, they make lunches, they make snacks, pre-done. You just open them up out of the fridge, heat them up in your microwave, maybe on your oven. I do it on my stovetop if I'm going to heat them up. Sometimes I just eat them cold. And holy cow, just try them. If you haven't tried it, I highly, highly recommend it. If you go to thegoodkitchen.com/WLC, you'll get 15% off your first order. So do it now, and you'll be glad you did. Now let's get back to the show. What, were you always involved in the bigger picture, the bigger running picture, or were you like, how? Because when I look at the highlights of your career over the last 50 years, like you've done some really major things just around the movement of this, both the sport and of the community, just like non-sport, just running for fun. And but did you think about that part of the job, or was it mostly for you the coaching of the individual athlete or the team or the mechanics and whatnot?
No, I never thought about that. The issue was, oh, we need this. This is wrong. Fix it.
Right.
Never thought about the bigger consequence. This is dumb. I got to take care of my athletes. Oh, I became the head of the local governing body in New York, which is now USA Track and Field. I took it over because they were doing wrong by athletes. And then I said, well, I want this. This is what I want for my athletes. I'll have to create it for others. Chiropractic. I got involved before it ever existed in mainstream sport because one of my athletes who wanted to come train with me insisted, due to her body type, no, I'll move to California with you, but I got to have a chiropractor. Huh? They're quacks.
That's right.
Why would you do that? Says, they work for me, and I ain't coming unless I got one. All right. Who's your chiropractor? Dr. Anderson. I called him. Is there somebody out here in San Diego, Southern California, that does what you do? Now, mind you, I don't believe in what you do, but she says I got to have it. Kathy Lawson. He said, yes, go see a fellow named John Thie. Gave me his phone number. He's in Pasadena. I call him up. He's on vacation. His assistant answered the phone. I gotta find somebody that does what you do in San Diego. Doesn't exist. Come on, it's just chiropractic. Of course it exists. He says, no, we do this, we do this. He says, all right, I got to see John Thie. This is a 2-hour drive away.
That's a long way.
And he's not here. Well, when is he? Where is he? He's away. He'll be back in 2 weeks. Well, I'm his assistant. I'm his partner. I can help you. I said, no, he said I had to see John Thie. Said, well, but we do the same thing. They said I have to see John Thie. And ultimately, he says, look, come on up. Try it. What's the worst thing that happens? I can undo whatever I do. Oh, all right. Put her in the car after practice, drove 2 hours, watched what he did. This is Dr. Leroy Perry.
Oh, I know Dr. Perry. Yeah.
Well, that's how it started.
Yep. He's got his place is about a mile from my house right now. He's in West LA in Palms.
Yep. No, helped start it. I watched him. It was unbelievable. We went out before we drove back to San Diego, went to Coco's, had dinner. And essentially I said, if you can do this all the time, and whatever you say you can do, you do, because nobody's going to believe it. A tie in the MD world, that's fine. No progress, okay. But in this world of chiropractic, which nobody mainstream believes in, we don't have that luxury. And we basically made an agreement that, yes, he could. I would teach him the sport. And it was, I started putting our team in a motorhome after practice and driving 20 of them up there.
Wow.
He'd work on them. He'd come to meets. He was not allowed in the training area. He was verboten. We used to treat people underneath the stands.
Really?
And
wow.
Then when we finally thought this was ready for prime time, one of my athletes, a girl named Patty Van Wolvelaar, who just this past fall went into the USA Track and Field Hall of Fame as a hurdler. She was a student at Miracosta College. She organized a clinic. We had 12 or 13 world record holder Olympic medalist track and field athletes. Wilt Chamberlain, who was my friend and sponsor. And we had Leroy. And 500 kids came and coaches in the gym. We had Al Feuerbach, who is the world record holder in the shot put, strong as a moose, on a chair in front of 500 people, and Leroy basically made it so he couldn't lift his arm. And weakened him, put him back together, showed him all sorts of stuff. that he'd never seen or he'd never been treated by Leroy before in front of 500 people. And that's where it started. And one step at a time took chiropractic public. I didn't intend to.
Right.
No, you do the things right. You open up, you see things that make sense.
Right.
And you open them up and you look back later and say, wow, that was cool. But Leroy Perry was the center of it, a superstar.
How did that change? How did that change the? What did athletes do before chiropractic? Was there trainers? Were there physical therapists? Were there massage therapists?
No, massage therapists? Are you kidding? No, it was drugs. I mean, not steroids. There was, there were shots. There were operations. There was ice. There was heat. It was in a different world. None of the holistic forms of medicine were prevalent, were mainstream. Whether it's acupuncture, whether it's massage, they're all fringe. I mean, we had a huge fight to get chiropractic covered by insurance. And, I mean, it was, we speak about chiropractic and these sorts of forms of these modalities as being completely common today. But it was a tremendous fight, even with the USOC. In 1976, going into the trials, we wanted to get Leroy added to the U.S. Olympic staff. Mm-hmm. And virtually every athlete at the Olympic track and field trials signed a petition. The coaching staffs, coaches, everybody. And the USOC turned us down.
Wow.
At that time, a fellow named Fred Sowerby in Washington, D.C., a quarter miler, had just recently led the effort to get Antigua and Barbuda added to into the Olympic Games. But he was a runner. He wanted somebody else to manage the team. And he kept calling me. I kept turning him down. And that day I'd been turned down on this, and then two of my athletes just missed the Olympic team by absolute fractions. I want to go off and pump gas in Arkansas. And he called, and I says, okay, here's the deal. I'll manage your team if I get to name your medical staff in perpetuity for any event that I want. Sure, who cares? And off we went to the Olympics. Leroy's in the opening ceremonies. We basically, no matter what the country, all athletes are coming there. I mean, it was like medical central in Antigua, in the Antigua room. And, I'm the head of the team.
Where were the Olympics? Where were the Olympics that year?
Montreal. That was in Montreal.
Okay.
And I can still remember one of the great moments. I won't name his name, but the head doc for the USOC that had turned us down. He comes onto the practice field and he sees Leroy, runs up. What are you doing here? What are you doing here? Says, wait. Doc, what are you doing here? See, your credential doesn't allow you here. Leroy's, it's an infinity credential. He can go anywhere he wants. Security?
Wow.
No. I mean, great fun. Look, I can ramble on in the past. It's today I can't remember.
Well, then let's stay on the past.
Alzheimer's is a terrible thing. That's why we need whole life challenge.
That's right. No, I love hearing stories about the way things were because it puts perspective on the way things are today. You know, like, heck, for the last 15 years, I've been teaching people how to use Swiss balls and lacrosse balls and rubber bands and tools that we take for granted. We take for granted today that this is how you do stuff. Now, that's self-massage and almost self-chiropractic. I mean, you can't really do chiropractic on yourself. But I've never really envisioned a day where a therapist was not available to an athlete, especially at that level. You know, like I think about Olympians. I think about the way a professional elite level runner has to care for themselves today to be competitive. And it's hard to, I wasn't there. How could I picture what it was like before? I mean, I feel like there was a toughness that was required, perhaps, that today it's a different toughness, maybe. I don't know. Just to get to the start line.
I will say, having been blessed to have been on some Olympic staffs and head managers past in Rio and a bunch of other national team staffs, far and away the most important component of any staff is our medical team. And they are unbelievable. They fall into Leroy Perry footsteps. But sports psychology, massage therapy, trainers, doctors, chiropractors, and they all recognize the benefits of the other modalities.
Yeah.
The latest in electronic stuff. It is remarkable what they can do and what we didn't have. But, you know, that's elite athletes. That's elite sport, and it continues to progress. Think about this. High school sports, women's athletics. Imagine a time when there were none, when there were no girls' sports in high school.
That doesn't make any sense, actually. It doesn't even compute.
And we lived through that, Title IX. Staggering situation. Do you realize that the average age of a U.S. Olympian, I think, is now about 29? In 1972, the overwhelming majority of our women's Olympic track and field team were high school kids.
Wow.
There were a few collegians. Virtually all went to historically black colleges, Tennessee State, Alcorn A&M, Prairie View, the like, that did give offers, did give scholarships. A few were post-collegians. Now, if a high school girl qualifies for the Olympic track and field trials, they think she's the second coming.
Yeah.
No. Back then, sport in this country is based upon strong scholastic programs, numbers-wise. You try something, you like it, or you're good at it, you try it for free in school, you keep doing it. You don't like it, you try something else for free. Mm-hmm. The weakness of that system is we only have 12 to 13 sports in most high schools, 17 to 20 in any college, and yet there's 42 Olympic sports. We should have many more sports. But back then, a woman, had to say, boy, I'd like to run track. Great. Where do I do it? I have to find a place to do it.
They couldn't do it in school.
Then I'd have to go pay to do it.
They couldn't.
And then I'd actually do it, and at that point, I'd find out, oh, I like it. But no, you went through all those steps.
Huh.
And
wow.
It was complete. At one point, in 72, there were as many track and field programs for boys in New York City as there were for girls in the entire country.
Wow.
No. The world is so different today. Women just were hosed.
So if you went to the Olympics in 72 and the average age was high school, I mean, I can't quite put my head around so my son is 11. That would mean he'd have to discover what he may excel at by the time he was, I don't know, 8, 9, 10, or maybe 11, and then specialize in that thing in order to get 3 or 4 years of experience to be able to put him at a level where he could compete with the best in the world. I mean, is that kind of what would happen?
Yeah. I had a young lady, or our team had a young lady, Cindy Gilbert, who made the Olympic team when she was 14 in the high jump. And she wasn't alone. The other two girls, Sandy Goldsmith and Leanne Wilson, were also 15 or 16.
I mean, how long had they been high jumping? A year? 2 years?
They've been in at that time AAU, now USA Track and Field Competition. No, probably 3 or 4. Junior Olympic type stuff, club stuff. Everything was club. No, that was your careers, period, in Olympic sports, with the rarest of exception, were done when you finish college.
Right.
For those, and those were men that, competed. All right, now I got to go do something real. Today we look at running, we look at many sports as lifetime pursuits. No, you were trying to jam everything into a few years. You were pushing the envelope, perhaps physically before they were ready to be pushed.
Yeah. Think
about distance running. No, your brain gets ready. I mean, a world-class distance runner is in his 30s.
Right.
No, that's 10 years after they were retired years ago.
Where does distance begin and track and field end? Like, what's the distance? Is it 5K? 3K?
Well, I wouldn't say distance. When does road racing begin? And distance. I mean, a 10,000 meter runner on the track is a distance runner.
Right.
But, we got road racing. And pretty much 5K and up. But again, it's a different sport. In a road race, you finish, 3 or 4 seconds behind. That's a photo finish. In a track meet, you finish 3 or 4 seconds behind. You're holding up the next race.
Yeah.
It's a different mindset.
Well, you got, you got involved in the development of road racing and then the Rock and Roll Marathon, which prior to, I'm still putting my head around all this stuff. There was no marathon for people to run. I guess there were marathons, but you helped to popularize marathons.
Again, you get lucky. Right place, right time, and in many cases, just flat out blind luck. The Rock and Roll Marathon, which was not a series to start with, when we created the Rock and Roll, I say we, led by a fellow named Tim Murphy. The first one was in 1998. We started working on it in 1996. It always, if you're doing things right, it takes a year and a half to create this stuff. But its predecessor was the Carlsbad 5000.
Oh, I remember that race. Yeah, I've done that race. Yeah,
the world's greatest 5,000.
Yeah,
5K. It changed the world from a 10K world to a 5K world in 1986, and it was the first spectator-friendly road race.
Yeah.
All road races, the gun goes off, the fast guys go first, the slow guys go last. By the time the slow guys finish, the fast guys have gone home.
Right.
And the slow guys are the fans of the fast guys.
Yep.
And what Carlsbad did, no, we're going to have this big party by the sea. Carlsbad is a town on the in Southern California on the Pacific coast. And then we're going to take all of the world's best athletes, and we're going to we have these people's races first. They have their party, and then in the middle of that party, we take the world's best athletes for prize money only, running in the middle of that party on a spectator-friendly course. And we've now had 16 world records, 11 American records. I mean, it's record central. And the world's greatest athletes have come there and have lit the place up. Now, people came and said, well, you did that with a 5K, let's do that with a marathon. Oh, yeah, that's a great idea. We'll run the marathon for the people, and then 6 hours later, while you're all lying around dead, we're going to run a 2-hour race.
That's right. Right.
No, that won't work.
Well, the logistics around making an endurance event exciting is, I mean, not even logistics, just the idea. I mean, my long races back in the 90s were something called the Eco Challenge. And it was
you're nuts.
It was a show on Discovery Channel, right? It was
absolutely.
It was Mark Burnett's first attempt at kind of reality TV endurance, and I mean it wasn't boring for me to watch, but it was a 5-day, 5-hour documentary series on the Discovery Channel, and it's a little like watching paint dry. I mean, it's just not. It's not exciting unless you have to manufacture drama, which I think is what Mark did, incredibly well when he rolled that into Survivor, or, it didn't roll it into Survivor. Survivor was its own thing, but creating that drama was part of what made Survivor so successul.
There's no question. And maybe certain sports are not as well adapted to the TV. But while we were creating rock and roll, at that time, every race in the world is a destination. It's the London, the Los Angeles Marathon.
Yeah.
And a new marathon in the world in 13 years. Money for anybody. But everything was a destination. Well, there already was a San Diego Marathon. It happened to be in Carlsbad, but it was there. So how are we going to make this thing interesting? Maybe it won't come out at 7:00 in the morning to watch runners run around.
The San Diego Marathon was in Carlsbad?
Oh, yeah. It's now called the Carlsbad Marathon. But
I didn't know that because I ran the San Diego Marathon back in the, or the half marathon. The world's finest city half marathon is what I ran.
That's America's finest city. The San Diego Marathon did start in San Diego, but by then it was in Carlsbad.
Ah, okay.
But the reality was there was a San Diego Marathon. So our thought process was they won't come out to watch running at that hour. We can't start the race at noon on a holiday like they did in Boston with Patriots Day, or 11:00 in the morning, in New York. No, it's going to have to start at dark 30. And how are we going to make this thing work? Why will people come out? Well, maybe they'll come out to listen to music. We'll run this race through 26 mini concerts. All right. What kind of music? Classical? No. Jazz? No. Rock and roll? All right. Yeah. So that was the concept. And the Rock and Roll Marathon was the working title, but it could never be the real name. That's a dorky name. We wanted to create the world's next great marathon. We wanted it in the same vision of the Carlsbad 5000.
Mm-hmm.
We had 3 separate meetings to try and come up with a real name. Finally, we gave up. Shit. All right. Oops, can't say that.
That's all right. That's all right.
We're toast. So we went with rock and roll. Thank God we did. We announced the marathon at the 100th running of the Boston Marathon. Our first ad was, you missed the first Boston, don't miss the first rock and roll. And Our first 30 entries came from 17 states and 2 countries, and they were 50-50 men and women. Now, this is significant. By mistake, despite our efforts to the contrary, we had created a theme event. The previous percentage, the largest percentage of women in any co-ed distance race was 23%.
Wow.
In New York. Most of the races were 10 to 15%. We were 50% from day one. And the average age was slightly older. The average economics were a whole income category higher. No, they all thought they were going to see the Rolling Stones at every mile. Now, that was a problem.
That's right. That's right.
But that demographic never changed. And it was so different than any other event out there. And it was all due to the theme nature. We still wanted to have the world's best athletes there, but it didn't have the feel of this race. And I'm only looking back after the fact as to trying to figure out what we'd created.
Right.
But it wasn't, this competition. Everybody was welcome. That was the thought process.
Another brief interruption to tell you and remind you that this podcast, the Andy Petronic podcast, it lives and breathes based on your word of mouth and your reviews in iTunes. If you enjoy the guests that we're having, if you enjoy the conversations, if you're learning something, there's no cost for this. I mean, the cost is really the work that I put into it. That's my cost. There's no cost to you. You just got to tune in and listen. But if you get something out of it, what I ask, instead of contributing money or anything like that, is talk about it. Talk about it in social media. Talk about it in Facebook. Post a link to one of the episodes. Send an email to a friend with forward the link to the episode to a friend. It really, 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 that's how it grows. That's really the only way it grows. If you're super excited and you want to leave a review and write about something, you can go to iTunes, bit.ly, use this link, bit.ly.com. I'm sorry, it's not bit.ly.com. It's bit.ly/Andy Petronic Podcast. It will open up the iTunes on your computer and you can leave a review. And I would really, really appreciate it. And the world appreciates it because the more people that hear these stories, the more lives we change for the better. So make it happen, people. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Let's get back to the show. Were there bigger risks in this than there were in just producing another big marathon event like race? Was it financially, was it a bigger risk? Were there, what was the potential downside of doing this?
Let's look at that. All right, so perhaps the greatest thing that we did in retrospect again was we looked at this event from a business perspective. No other races. I mean, the world at that point with road races was, I want to put on a road race. What budget do I think I need? I think I can get 2,000 people. I think I can get 2,000 people at $20 a head. Mm-hmm. All right, there's 40,000. Maybe I can get $10,000 worth of sponsors. Great. Now I have a $50,000 budget, but I can't spend it until I begin to get it in.
Right.
Tell me any business in the world that operates that way. Your corner drugstore, they start expecting to lose X dollars in year one as investment.
Yep.
Maybe I can break even as a standalone year in year two and make X dollars in year three. Now I'm at ground zero. So we approached it that way. How much is it going to cost us to make this special? How much do we really have to invest? So we, in fact, thought we were going to lose and needed to invest $450,000. We sold a third of the event to friends and Olympic medalists and coaches and, jogging fanatics that were friends of ours. Mm-hmm. In pieces as small as $15,000. Most were nondescript, non-name owners. Most visible one was a fellow named Frank Marshall, the movie producer who loved the Carlsbad 5000.
Yep.
But we thought we'd lose 450. In the end, well, everybody thought we were completely nuts and would be a complete failure. We had to guarantee every hotel room block.
Wow.
Nobody believed that people would come to run a running race.
Right.
They didn't come. We didn't have a large travel component for Carlsbad. Why would we have a large travel component for this this thing that had just been created?
Was it in? I don't know if you might have already said this. Was it in Carlsbad?
144 permits. It
Wow.
took us 144 permits.
What does a typical marathon take in permits? Like if you weren't doing a rock and roll marathon?
I've never done a typical one.
Okay.
It's certainly the world is different now.
Yeah.
That they've seen how this, but we needed it was an amazingly lengthy, complicated process. That there were roadblocks every step of the way.
Yeah. And was this first one in San Diego, in Carlsbad?
Amazing roadblocks.
Where are we talking about? Was it in San Diego? Was it in Carlsbad?
It was in San Diego.
Okay.
No. And it started where we continued to start the race up in Central Park, Balboa Park, on 6th Avenue there, different cross streets. And that time it finished downtown on Broadway. But it was all the stories are probably another podcast worth.
Yeah.
Suffice it to say, when it finally came to pass, our goal had been to be the largest first-time running event in history and to beat the Los Angeles Marathon that had 7,500. This is marathon. This is not half marathons. We hadn't created the destination half marathon yet. And we wanted to be 8,500. Also back then, to digress 1 second, charity in road racing was not as you see it now with team and training and lots of sponsored runners. Charity was, I'm going to make a donation of X dollars to local charities, local not-for-profits, who will then provide me volunteers. There was none of this other stuff. Team and training, and the Leukemia Society of America, a fellow named Dennis Allman came to Tim and said, "Hey, I'm interested in being your exclusive charity. And I'd like to bring runners from 21 of our chapters." How many chapters you got? 57, I think. Well, then if you want to be our exclusive national charity, why wouldn't you bring them from everywhere? Well, we've never done that. We can't do that. I want to bring 1,000 people. Tim said, not enough. Not good. Every chapter, you got to bring 4,500. He had no idea what the multiples were.
Right.
Well, that's not possible. I said, well, if you want to be our official exclusive charity, it better be. He comes back a little bit later and does. Ultimately brings 5,500.
Wow. But
they're raising net $2,800 a person.
Right.
Do the math. All of a sudden, we raised, through that event, $15.6 million net.
Wow.
And it changed the face of that charity. Changed the face of, candidly, the sport and charity running period. But we never did the math in that meeting. We would have never known. That was a pretty intimidating number. So the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society of America made $15.6 million. The hotel industry in the city that thought we were crazy, they made $35.8 million and became the largest annual economic impact generating sporting event in the region.
Keep going. I'm listening, but I got to shut my door because my dog is going crazy outside.
I got it. And we lost $1 million. We realized that we needed to have a slightly different business model going forward. And eventually we got it, we got into the black in our 4th year. But yeah, we didn't know everything that we thought we knew, and never works out exactly the way you want. We had 20,000 people sold out several months in advance.
In the first one?
It wasn't in year 1.
Wow.
19,900 and something. And it was the world's largest inaugural running event in history. Stayed that way until we created one in Arizona 5 years later.
Tracy, how'd you go about finding the bands? And since they aren't all the Rolling Stones, did you have auditions?
All right. One thing about, yes, I'm associated and will forever be associated with the Rock and Roll Marathon series and story. But if I've heard of them, we won't book them because chances are they're dead. I know zero about music. And in the beginning, you had to convince, these bands, you're going to have to be out there at 6 o'clock in the morning that first year.
Yeah, right. They're just getting to bed.
Transportation from bars and nightclubs to the starting line.
Right.
Once they got there and once they did it that first year and they saw the interaction with the runners, are all stopping and taking pictures and selfies. There didn't exist selfies back then, but whatever they are, it was an amazing interaction between the music and the participants. It's been easy to get them since then. But essentially we had some of the staff, led by Shauna Buffington, in a room listening to tapes and making calls and essentially designing what that musical experience would be on the course.
Uh-huh.
And over the years, it's matured as to how, you learn things. In year 1, the concept was to run this event through 26 mini concerts.
Yep.
And we were going to create an experience on the course, an event on the course. We weren't going to 1 year go from no participants, no spectators to, on the course in New York or Boston where it's loaded. No, we had to manufacture our own crowd. There'd be a water station, a different location. There'd be a band site, at a different location, cheerleaders, at a different location, the mile mark. Basically, we wanted to create activity every quarter mile. We put the cheerleaders a quarter mile after the music, the band, after the water station. You still there?
Yep, I'm there.
After the water station, and before they got their $250 honorarium, they had to pick up all the cups between the water station and the and their cheer station. But that first year, all right, we're going to have these mini concerts. Well, we found that spectators from the community weren't necessarily going to those band sites. And if they're 10 or 15 yards off the course, in order to create space for those spectators for the bands, when you've zoned out after 10 miles, you don't even know that the bands exist.
Right. You're too far away from the course. The band's too far away.
Year 2, we bring those bands onto the course.
Huh.
Big old signs with numbers in your face so that people recognized that music experience was there.
Right.
I can get lost in these stories.
Did you pay the bands? Was that part of the expenses
Sure.
that made the Rock and Roll Marathon bigger than
a small honorarium
Yeah.
for the course bands? But we would have, a major headliner at the finish line, and actually we had a post-race concert in the beginning. Yes, we'd have stuff at the finish line, but then you had a concert that night.
Yep.
A major headliner concert.
Oh, cool.
Huey Lewis and the News, Pat Benatar, and the Lovin' Spoonful was that first year.
Wow.
Now, we just knew we were going to make money doing that. Hey, every drugged out guy in the world could be put on concerts, and they were making money. Trust me, that's not the case. Those guys are smart. Boy, was that hard to do.
Making money on the concert.
We never made money on the concerts because we're running gigs.
Yeah.
But those are just the assumptions that one makes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Today, after a few years, those concerts, other than in Nashville and in Virginia Beach, those concerts are on the finish line, not held separately after the event.
Yeah.
But those are just the growth of the deal. When we first started, nobody put on events outside of where they live. Nobody put on more than one marathon in a year. Mm-hmm. And to create a series around the country, it wasn't anticipated to start with. But that's a story in its own right, and it worked out well.
Did the half marathon event come shortly thereafter? How long did that take to get going?
So after year one in San Diego, or leading up to it, we'd gotten a letter, an entry from. We used to get them actually by mail. We didn't do this online. From two fellows in Nashville. They were music executives, Royce Rizzer and Norbert Nix. And they both checked a high economic thing. They said they're SVPs or something, in the music industry. So we called them up. Hey, you want to be a sponsor? Well, no, I have no interest in being a sponsor, but why are you putting on a musical marathon in a non-musical city like San Diego? You should be doing this in Nashville. Oh.
Right. Right.
Well, I guess we'll talk to somebody. And a fellow named Phil Bredesen was the mayor there. He had just brought the Titans there. He's bringing the Predators. He believed that you couldn't be a major city unless you had a major marathon. That was his vision. So we went and we talked with them, and we eventually created the Country Music Marathon.
Cool.
It wasn't rock and roll.
Yeah.
No, nobody's going to have a brand. We didn't even know the word brand existed.
Yeah.
And in 2000, we put on an event there. We thought country music is the most popular music out there, but we found, lo and behold, it was in the spring, there was just 7,500 entrants. Now, yes, that was the fourth largest inaugural running event in history, but it sure wasn't 20,000 like we had in San Diego.
Right.
We had to figure out why that was the disconnect. And there's a bunch of stories in that. But Virginia Beach at the same time came calling and said, hey, we want to put on a major marathon on Labor Day. And, wow, okay. So we went down and looked, and, oh, there was a hurricane on Labor Day. Well, that won't work. And all those fall marathons, we didn't want to compete with the fall marathons, whether it was Columbus, New York, Chicago, you name them, Marine Corps, all in that region.
Yep.
So we proposed to them. We thought the sport had been dumbed down. That's not the right word, but it changed enough through some of the information that we got in analyzing our numbers in Nashville, that if we put on a half marathon and sold it the way we sold a marathon, they would come. They all need to run a half marathon before they run a marathon. But half marathons at that point were local training runs for marathons.
Yep.
The largest inaugural run had been 2,900 on Long Island. And the largest one going on at that time was Philadelphia. It was about 6,000. But we thought if we marketed it properly, that could change. We convinced Virginia Beach that was the right move. We went public with our event. Our first ad was half the distance, twice the fun. And I used to add, and you're alive to enjoy it at the finish.
Right.
People thought we were so nuts about that people would come to do a half marathon. Runner's World bet us a two-page spread worth $40,000 that we would fail. Well, our number, we published that we would sell it out at 12,000. This is when the largest half of the in the country was 6,
right,
and the largest inaugural was 2,900. And it even Leukemia Society of America said nobody's going to come to run half marathon. We can't be involved with you there, despite the millions of dollars and how the world has changed with you. They didn't believe that anybody would travel to a half marathon and raise money.
And this was what year? Because I don't know if you had said that.
2001.
2001. Okay.
And we actually created our own charity with the Entertainment Industry of America, Entertainment Industry Foundation, Courage for Cancer, with Pierce Brosnan. And I think 700, maybe $750,000. Well, we sold out in July for the Labor Day event.
Wow.
And we won our two-page spread. The demographics were identical. One of the other concerns had been, if you looked at any event out there, when you added a shorter distance event, it became local and the demographics changed.
Yeah.
And so we had to ensure for the city that wouldn't be the case.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the beginning. And we said, okay, we'll do a rock and roll half marathon. So then the concept was, we'll have a marathon in one city, a half marathon in another with each name. We'll have a country music marathon and a country music half.
Mm-hmm.
We had actually registered virtually every musical name out there. Salsa, Motown, soul, jazz, just thinking about cities that we could go to.
Yeah.
And then Tim was, other than Fred Lebo, the greatest marketer to retail runners ever. He understood them. And after that, when Phoenix area came calling, he said, no, we're going to go. Rock and roll is the one that lights them up. None of these other musical forms really light them up, no matter how popular they are. And we added a half marathon and a marathon together. It was the first combined event out there. And we had 29,000 people show up.
Wow.
In Phoenix, Scottsdale, and Tempe.
Was it a weekend? So it was like half marathon one day, then marathon the next day, or same day?
This was all one race.
Got it.
We just...
two finish lines.
Well,
one starting line, two finish lines?
Next to each other. We ran them together.
Same course, though?
except one went 13.1 miles further.
Yeah, right. But not 2 laps on the same course. It was
no. Never,
right.
never got there. And one of the things that spurred us to go the half marathon route, when we didn't get the numbers in Nashville that I thought we should be getting, I went and looked at the registrations in different states. And in New England, there's 2 people from Rhode Island. I knew them both. There was 3 people from New Hampshire or Massachusetts. I knew them. This didn't make any sense. So I called them up. I said, well, why no more other people? And they said, since our race was in the end of April, it's too cold in the winter to be training for a marathon. We're not outside yet. I said, what are you, wimps? I mean, I for 25 years, I missed 5 days of practice. I'm outside, so what? The world had changed. And, that was the lesson. Okay. Maybe the half is the answer. It turned out to be.
Wow. I want to switch gears just a little bit because I have a quote. I don't know where I pulled it from, but you said at one point, the activity of running is healthy, but the sport of running is not.
Correct.
What do you explain that? I think I agree with you. I want to know more about where that comes from.
We have people that first of all, as an event, I believe you're only as good as your weakest link. I believe if you have a poor expo, that takes the overall event down. You have a poor charity program. You have a poor elite component. You have a poor course. Whatever it is, you're only as good as your weakest link as an event. Now, we've got thousands, hundreds of thousands of people being healthy and pushing their envelope as they grow athletically and physically. We have people getting off the couch, trying this stuff, being encouraged and enjoying it. Heck, and you look out at them, my God, the great majority of the runners are heftier today than the spectators used to be in the beginning. Mm-hmm. This is good. This is wonderful. But look at the front of the race. Look at the appreciation and the respect for that. In the old days, you only got, in the newspaper, you only got any acknowledgement based upon the level of athlete, the quality of the elite athletes in your event. Today, and if you had a story about this person changing their life, raising X dollars for charity, whatever, couldn't even get that talked about. Today, it's completely the other way around.
Right.
Today, I mean, when we first came up and first started to promote charity and running, at national running event meetings, National Running Federation meetings, I'm on panels and I am getting pillared for ruining their sport because I have slow people at the back. I didn't know that it hurt you.
Right.
But today, the attention and respect to the front of that race is at all-time low. If I mentioned Frank or I mentioned Jim or Mary or Joni, you knew that was Joan Benoit. Bill was Bill Rogers. Frank was Frank Shorter. You knew them by first names. They're on the cover of Sports Illustrated.
Yep.
Our sport was there. We were a mainstream sport. track and road racing. Today we're a niche sport. Yeah, so from that perspective, the sport, not the activity, the sport of running is in deep trouble. We have people trying to change it, but those are the facts today.
And why does that, well, from the standpoint of the everyday person, you know, the Joes, the Marys, the Tims, the Andys that are going to go out and run a race, why does the sport matter? Because to me, like, I think about that as just a consumer and just as a hobbyist, like, well, that's great. Then it's accessible. This 26.2 mile or 13.1 mile or 10K or 5K is accessible to me. And that's really what's more important, is the health of running.
I can't argue that. Yes, I believe that they are better. I believe that an event is more fun, is more exciting, is better for a community, better for each of the individual participants if there's that excitement up at the front, that whether it's television cameras, whether it's that aspirational element. Oh my God, Meseret Defar just ran 106 for a half marathon. She's a woman with 2 kids. She's a representative for UNICEF. I mean, and she started as a complete throwaway as an athlete. Oh my God. Isn't that a marvelous story?
Yep.
She's a wonderful role model. So that's an added. That can be, if we work it properly, a positive. But the actual, hey, come out and get physically fit, do something. No, that works. I don't know if I made sense with that.
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes sense. I think it's not something that, I mean, you've basically created the hobbyists, the event for hobbyists, for people that are just want to go out and get healthy and run, and you made it accessible, and you made it fun, and you made it, you know, I think about 13.1 miles today, because I'm not a runner these days. I mean, I run, but not like that distance. I don't run more than maybe 10K. It's accessible. 13.1 is something I could train for and get there within 6 months, you know, and whereas 26.2, holy crap. And so I wonder if the success that you've seen in the rock and roll and then in the various events that it's spurred on outside of that has led to, you know, the shifting of the demise of the sport.
Absolutely. The answer is yes. And it's too easy, and it's less expensive to let that front of the race go. Is it making a bigger and better and more exciting event? To my mind, yes. To many people's minds, yes. They aspire to run the New York City Marathon or the Boston Marathon or the Chicago Marathon or the London Marathon or the World Marathon Majors. It wouldn't be a World Marathon Major without addressing every element of the sport.
Right.
I am incredibly proud of the fact that we've had 23 world records and 16 American records in our another 11 world U.S. all-comers records in our events, and even more so than in the 2012 and 2016 Olympic marathon trials, U.S. Olympic marathon trials. More than 25% of the participants qualified in our events.
Wow.
We led an effort to, and they didn't all, the great majority qualified in our half marathons, because we led an effort to allow people to qualify for the Olympic trials by running a half marathon at a certain time, as opposed to having to run a marathon. People thought that was a bit revolutionary at the time, but I pointed out that in 1984, when the Olympic Games had finished, the medalists, Charlie Spedding, Carlos Lopes, and Brain, John from Ireland. They had run a collective 5 marathons. One of them that was his debut marathon, the Olympic Games.
Wow.
Unlike every other event, history or experience is not a factor in your success there. So let's just have quality athletes. Who cares how they got to the starting line?
Yep.
Galen Rupp, that was his first marathon when he won the marathon trials in 16, and then got a medal in the Olympic Games. So I look to find ways to include folks. I look to find ways, as opposed to exclude them.
You would almost think, as we're talking about this, and this is not something I'd ever really thought about before, but you'd almost think that because you've increased the pool of the availability in the pool of the everyday person being able to run marathons, that you'd be getting more and more higher level people qualifying for these big events. And that would drive the top end to make this prize money and the sport healthier.
The answer to that is yes. We are certainly getting that. We're getting greater depth. It's just not on people's radar screen. And they are not connected to the back of the pack.
Right.
When I started by saying about Carlsbad, the gun went off, the fast guys went first, the slow guys went last, and by the time the slow guys finished, the fast guys went home, and the slow guys were the fans of the fast guys.
Yep.
That's not the case anymore.
Right.
They don't know who the fast guys are necessarily.
Yeah.
We have to work at it. We have to sell it differently. We're in a different world PR-wise than we were decades ago.
Yep.
Heck, think about from when I first got involved in road racing to where we are today. Back then, you worked full-time. You tried to break 3 hours in the marathon. Courses were closed at 4 hours. We hadn't invented goo or Gatorade or anything else yet. There were absolutely no porta potties on a course.
Wow.
None. Zip.
Wow.
And you took a picture. They were these lean, mean, type A male running machines. Today, you run 20 miles a week. Oh, and back then you ran 90 miles a week.
Were there aid stations back then? Were there water stations?
Oh, sure.
There were.
Sure.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
But not every mile, probably.
Huh?
Probably not every mile.
In the beginning, it was actually a virtual petition, class action case against the IAAF. The rule required you couldn't have them more than every 5K.
Wow.
And why? Well, back then, marathons they were small and for elite groups.
Yeah.
The argument that was led largely by Fred Lebo and the New York Roadrunners, no, we got too many people to go to one station. The idea is we have to be able to spread that replenishment out. Mm-hmm. Therefore, we can have aid stations more frequently.
Yep.
But if you drink today, every aid station, you can get hypernatremia.
Yes,
but,
right.
So there's balances. But today, you run 20 miles a week, people think they changed their life. You run 5 hours for a marathon, people think you're a god. Mm-hmm. These courses are moving restaurants. We have more porta potties on a course than exist in some cities. And you take a picture, they're your neighbors. That's the transition. That's the difference from when we first started. All good, all healthier.
Right. Tracy, what do you see as the future? Where do you see this going? What's the next? Do you have any insight?
Even though we were the involved in bringing business into the sport. We were the second for-profit organizer of road races. I am concerned that that the passion is going for the sport and for the participants, that it's becoming too much of a business. I truly believe that if you try and create special events with a team of passionate people, passionate about the space that you are in, the money will follow. Mm-hmm. And special does not have to be big and gaudy. Special could be having a Rotary 5K and everybody has the world's greatest pancake breakfast afterwards. Mm-hmm. But if you manage to the bottom line with a group of people who might be talented but are not necessarily passionate about the space that they're in, you're just timing your demise to mediocrity. And I think that we are seeing this a whole lot of places right now. People said, oh, those idiots in elite racing and then the competitive group, they're making money. Well, shoot, if they can do it, we sure can. We'll just copy what they're doing. But the passion was there. The goal, we never sat in the meeting, ever. Probably until 2013 or 2014. We never sat in the meeting and asked, all right, what do we need to cut to meet this budget? No, the questions were always, how do we make something better? Right. How do we make it better for our participants? How do we make it cooler? I hope that we get the passion for this sport back in the game.
Well, I really appreciate what you're saying. You know, I think it's the earmark of a successful business when they start to ask those questions. How do we make what we do better for the person that's using it? And you know, whether you're a coach or you're a software developer or you're running races, you've got to put yourself, I mean, this is my experience, you've got to put yourself in the position of the first-time user of your product. And how do you make this a life-changing moment for them? How do you make the use of this tool change their life? They'll be your fan for life, forever, you know? Yeah, I don't know of really many successful businesses that don't do that. I mean, there may be, I'm sure there are, but I don't know, not in this world, not in this category of business.
Well, I agree 100%, but we tend to forget that this is a remarkably young business.
Yeah.
What's going on now? I mean, it's 20 years ago that we ran the first rock and roll.
Right.
It's 20 years ago that there was this first major charity, sponsored runner charity effort. That's a nanosecond in many businesses.
Yeah.
We forget. So we're going through a whole settling out process. We were the first company to buy events. We were the first company to be sold. You know, all these things that other worlds have been in. It's industries have gone through. So I'm hopeful that, and I'm confident that this will be a sorting out period and we go forward. It'll be good for everybody.
Tracy, what are some of the things that you do? I mean, are you a runner? Do you keep physically fit? Like, how do you keep in this sport yourself personally?
See, the great news about this podcast is that you only are showing up.
You mean I wouldn't ask that question if I could see the rest?
No, I try to work out 5 to 7 times a week. I do elliptical. I do a little bit of weight training, a little bit of core. What the Whole Life Challenge is very, very cool in this respect. I had my annual physical around Thanksgiving in 2015.
Wait.
And
it's supposed to be an annual physical, Tracy.
Well,
that's 4 years ago.
These moments in my life. All right? We've already talked about my 12-year-old.
Not necessarily your last annual physical, but an annual
Correct.
physical. Got it.
Correct.
Okay, got it.
And everything that used to be green was red.
Right.
And I knew that I had worked out less in that previous year than I had in the previous 50. And I knew I had to change. The doc said, hey, you got to do 30 minutes of cardio a day. And I started immediately, and I cataloged it. And have been doing that essentially ever since. Do I try and become the next, Israeli God? No. But it was amazing to watch by just trying to focus on, and I do the elliptical because if I run, my subtalar joint locks up. So great, I've given up.
And then you don't walk for a while, right?
Oh, you walk, but no, the reality is I want to feel like I am physically working out. Everybody's got to find a way to fit being healthy into the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
For me, I like going to 24-hour fitness. I like getting on a machine there. I like that commitment. And I do virtually the same thing all the time. I know that's not making me get better, but I'm just trying to do this. But what I found, yes, within months, everything was then green again. Without trying to lose weight, I did lose about 20 pounds. I put everything I do down. I mean, the amount of time, what my weight is, and if I'm doing the light weights additionally. So I've got daily from that moment. And without trying to, I eat much less red meat. Things that I used to love and crave, for some reason I don't. There's this natural evolution. It ain't there yet. And there's nothing you could do to tell me to give up my peppermint mocha coffee mate creamer, no matter how bad it is for me, which it isn't.
It's funny. People get this sense that because I do what I do, and this has been going on for years, even way before the Whole Life Challenge, but that they have to eat better around me, or they have to be different, that I'm going to judge them somehow, or they're going to judge themselves, by eating so-and-so or drinking so-and-so. And I think, one of the things I always tell people is, in my opinion, you never want to let your joy of life, your joy of the moments in your life, the things that are really important, like I think of George Burns smoking a stogie, which for some reason for him was just really important and he loved it. Who am I to tell you to give that up because it's healthier without it? Is there a level of joy that you get from a peppermint mocha that actually makes you healthier because you get that joy every day? I mean, it sounds kind of silly, right? Could George Burns have lived as long if he didn't smoke a stogie every day? What if he had died earlier because he didn't? I don't know. But I don't know the answers to these things. Now, if you lived on peppermint mochas and you were 450 pounds and everything was in the red, I might suggest that you make some adjustments. But, you got to love your life.
No, you're right. And then the point that I was saying, it was dramatic. If you do things right, these other things seem to happen.
Yes.
I mean, when you're trying to create an event, you asked earlier of all these different things that I may have been involved in, was that my intention? Well, no, I was just trying to do right, and this happened.
Yes, right.
I was trying to fix a problem that I saw that somebody else may not have seen, and these things happened. You can't sit out there and say, oh, I now have to change my life and get fit and become this paragon of physical fitness.
Yeah.
No, you do things, and these things sort of happen naturally. We create events properly, money follows.
Yeah.
You don't do it properly, things go wrong.
Well, I think what you're describing is finding your why. Why? Like, why are you doing the event? Like, are you doing it to make money? Well, if you are, you're going to get one result. If you're doing it because you love the event, it's a totally different result. And other things will fall into a line with you.
One of the things as a coach, I never sat there and said, and it's complete, it results in complete failure, 90% failure. Oh, I have to meet this time to qualify. Everything is geared at running X to make the Olympic standard, to make the NCAA standard, to make the conference standard. No. Become the best athlete you can. Train properly. Learn how to compete properly. And when the time comes and you have the basic talent, you will always get your mark.
Yeah.
But you have to stay in this. You can't get distracted by this artificial thing.
Right.
Which is real. But it's the idea was to become healthier. I didn't try and lose weight. The idea was, I need to do this. Oh, all of these other things happened. You will get all of the results of being the best athlete that you can. Every time, all the time.
I think this is a great place to end it, because I think that is probably the most beneficial advice, the most profound advice coming from someone who's lived it for as long as you have. It applies today as it did back when you started, finding your why and letting the results follow based on, what they will. It's beautiful.
I've been very lucky. Very, very cool. Wouldn't trade anything. And even when we've been disappointed in results or circumstances, I would much prefer to go through and have anticipated and hoped for more. I don't want to ever set the bar low and doubt people and doubt circumstances. No, just go for it.
Yeah.
And hey, you're doing great. I love the whole life challenge.
Tracy, thanks so much. Thanks so much for being here and for everything you've done. I mean, like I said, I know you've done it because it made sense for where you were and the people that were there, but you did it. You didn't sit by and watch it and complain about it and, say it's not fair that it's not this way. You actually took action and made a difference. And I'm grateful. I mean, I'm grateful that occurred and that you were the guy that has done that. So thank you for everything you've done.
Let me close with one interesting story that half your audience will not relate to.
Well, half will. That means that's good.
So I'm a high school senior in the fall of 1969. And I didn't want my dad to have to pay for college. And I didn't know if I'd get a grant where I might like to go. So I applied for ROTC. And in October, I got a letter back telling me that I was 4F, physically unfit for military service due to allergies and asthma. Huh. I said, what do you mean? Well, how can that be? I carry my breather with me all the time. Yeah, great, idiot. And what happens in the jungles in Vietnam when you run out?
Right.
Oh. Well, I had just been handed the golden ticket. And that era, that was the golden ticket. People don't get that today. When I said 4F, most people didn't know what that meant. But that was big. I didn't have to find out if I had any balls. I didn't have to find out if I go to Canada to get out of the Vietnam War. I didn't have to find out if I had any courage. Right. I didn't have to find out anything about myself in that era when Vietnam and the war and the draft dominated everything.
Yep.
I made a commitment that day that with every life decision, I would try and make it with courage. I would push the envelope. I would try and take a chance on being great. And from that moment on, I have. Heck, when we came out here to do rock and roll, I took a 75% pay cut from what I was doing in New York to come and create this. I believed in it. But each decision along the way that we've talked about, fine. Other people fought you. Other people didn't think you were right. No, push it. So that moment in the fall of 1969 sort of fosters many of these other things.
Wow, you never know how those life events that are seemingly obstacles or hindrances can turn into, you know, that's the fabric of your life. Really. I mean, if you look at your success since then.
No, and we all have them.
Yep.
We just, this past, with my National Scholastic Athletics Foundation, we created the National High School Track and Field Hall of Fame this past year. And one of the first people to go into the hall in the inaugural class was Michael Carter, Michelle Carter's dad, who still holds the high school shot put record by about 5 feet. He threw 80 feet a bunch of years ago. And he gets up and he tells his story. And as a junior, or with the first year throwing the shot, he gets second at a meet in Texas somewhere. And they're waiting around to present the awards. And they have to keep waiting because the winner is off doing whatever he's doing. And Michael finally yells to him, "Hey, come on. You got to do this. If you're not going to come over, we'll all step on the stand, on the top. We'll stand on the top podium." And the guy comes over, wagging his finger at him. "As long as I'm around, you will never stand on that top stand." That was the last time that Michael lost. And to this day, you can hear it in his voice that has driven him. Wow. That innocuous thing. You never know what lights you up.
Yep.
I don't know what lights you up, but I've given you a couple points of it lit me up.
That's good stuff. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks again.
Great fun.
Hey, it's Andy, and thanks so much for listening. If you want to know more about what I'm learning each month, head over to andypetronic.com and subscribe to my monthly newsletter. If you were touched, moved, or inspired by anything you heard today, chances are someone else you know would be too. Please take a moment to think about who and send them a link to this episode. And if you're super stoked, please head over to iTunes to write a review. The best way to keep current on guests and episodes is to subscribe so that the latest one will automatically get delivered straight to your phone. The apps I use for this are Apple Podcasts, Overcast, or Pocket Casts. The Andy Petronic Podcast is produced by our team, Winslow Jenkins, Becca Borowski, and Ernie Hurtado. Big thanks to Nikki Grudadaria for the artwork. You can find all of our episodes, links, and complete show notes at wholelifechallenge.com/podcast. I'm Andy Petronic. Thanks for listening.